Okay, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of AI Innovation in Veterinary Medicine. Today, I have the pleasure of bringing Aaron Massecar to the podcast. So, hey Aaron, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So, this episode is a little bit different because Aaron is not a veterinarian, but has been in the space for a long time. And I wanted everyone to hear some of the perspectives and thoughts that he's doing. So, Aaron, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this space?
Sure. Without going into too much detail, so my undergrad, my master's, and my PhD were all in philosophy. While I was doing my PhD, I met somebody. We later got married. She became a veterinarian, and I got introduced to this whole space. And I've been fascinated with it ever since the very beginning. So many really interesting, really passionate people doing amazing work for animals, and it's hard not to be excited about the space.
Yeah, I think one thing that we always say internally here in the team is that everyone is so passionate. Everyone is so passionate, and they're so friendly. When we ask for feedback, when we talk to them, when we learn, when I invite people over to the podcast, like everyone is just willing to do it and talk. So
Mhm.
I really resonate with that. And so tell us a little bit about your journey within the space itself. You're currently the executive director of the Veterinary Innovation Council. Of course, I want to get into that, but before that, like how did you get into that role? What are the things that you were exposed to? You're somebody that knows quite a bit about AI and how to apply it to VetMed specifically, but I'm sure that you didn't learn that overnight. So what was that journey of getting to where you are today from VetMed as a whole?
Yeah, when I first started working in veterinary medicine, I was working with a veterinarian named Dr. Adam Little, and he was introducing me to everything that was happening in the space. And I kind of just assumed that every veterinarian was like him, somebody who's like really passionate about the future of veterinary medicine,
Yeah.
technology, all that kind of stuff, how we can make everything better with that. So I got involved with the Innovation Council back in 2017. And then I was with them for a couple of years and then left and moved up here to Colorado and
Mm.
worked with CSU for a little while and then
Mm.
worked with Veterinary Emergency Group for a little while and
Oh,
then
great.
now back with the Innovation Council. Yeah, and about the AI stuff, it's just really clear that it's touching everything in veterinary medicine, right? So, we can start talking about radiology back in like 2018, 2019 when Signal Pet first
Right.
came onto the market. And
Right.
they were kind of first in and a lot of headwinds. And I really admire them for being able to push through all of that and
Mhm.
still offer a product that a lot of people are really interested in. So that's been really interesting. And then from there, scribing has been going gangbusters. And you look at the adoption curve of that, and it's much more of a hockey stick looking curve than we would see with radiology. And I think there's really good reasons for it, right? Like it solves the problem directly. Like veterinarians don't have enough time in their day. And
Yeah.
when you're using a scribing tool, it can save an hour to 2 hours every single day.
Yeah.
On top of that, minimal workflow interruption. So like
Yeah.
it's just been great to see that and talk with people who are using it and watching the AI infuse everything that people are doing there, and then like get into everything from the code that these software programs are built on, and everything from diagnostics to client communication to all of that. Like
Yeah.
AI
Yeah.
is getting into all of that, and then even material science. Like AI is getting into how people are even building the diagnostic hardware. Like AI is touching everything in veterinary medicine, and it's been fascinating. One of the best places to go was there was a special edition of the Journal of the American College of Veterinary Radiologists that was put together by Dr. Ryan Appleby,
Mm.
and it goes through in a lot of detail exactly what's happening with radiology and AI. And that was, yeah, it took like a week to read it, but it was totally worth it and a great introduction to what's going on.
Oh, that's awesome. No, that's awesome. And it's funny that you mentioned Dr. Adam Little because he came to the podcast actually a couple
Yeah.
months ago. So, Dr. Little, if you're listening to this, then it's thank you for being here last time. No, that's great. The first time that I got to know about you and that I met you was during VIS and this basically this thing that you're leading as part of the VIC, where you're trying to bring not only the brightest minds, but to talk about the future of innovation in veterinary medicine. And I think you have a unique perspective because um, you get to see, I guess, different companies, different trajectories, different projects. You were here for a long time, of course, like you said, Signal Pet back in 2018. So like you have like a broad spectrum of like everything in the space. And I wanted to ask you, like, when you organize these things like VIS or in your, day-to-day job or whatever, like how, like, it's a twofold question, but like basically, what do you look forward when you, for example, invite people to VIS or the topics that you want to even talk about? It doesn't have to be AI specifically, but like innovation as a whole. And I guess, what are the things that are exciting you the most for next year's VIS and the year after?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great questions. And the first thing is that I am definitely not doing this work by myself. So we have a board of sponsors who make all this possible, and they're also committee members and deeply involved in everything that we do. So we would not be able to do any of that work without them.
Makes sense.
And then at the same time, we also have NAVC, the North American Veterinary Community, who runs the biggest conference in the world,
Yeah.
supporting a lot of the work that we do. So it might look like there's just, one magician up here up front, but that is absolutely not the case.
Yeah.
So when I think about VIS and the kinds of people that we want to put on the stage, it really comes down to a really simple question of, is what they're talking about, what they're engaged in, going to have a major impact on veterinary medicine in the
Right.
next 5 to 10 years? And sometimes we bring in people who are more talking about creativity and how to have an open mindset and an abundance mindset and that sort of thing. And sometimes we have people coming in talking about some wild technologies. Like there was a woman 2 years ago, Dr. Mary Lou Jepson, who was using essentially ultrasound devices to eradicate glioblastomas. And you're just like, wait, I'm sorry, what? And so
Time out.
I can't explain it. Like I do not have sufficient background to be able to explain it. But there are these technologies that are pretty well validated, and I'm like, people need to see this kind of stuff, right? If for no other reason than just to be aware of it on the periphery, but if there's an opportunity to bring that into their practice and have an impact on how they deliver healthcare, like that's amazing. And so that's what we're going for. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of it. I'm a little bit biased, but it's the only conference that's out there that is really for the veterinary community by a nonprofit organization that measures success by the number of people who are talking about these ideas and not revenue streams.
Yeah.
So that's why we're doing what we do, is like,
Yeah.
can we talk about those things? Can we help prepare veterinarians for what that future looks like so that it can make everyone's lives a little bit better? Focused on things in the past like telemedicine. That was a big area of focus. Access to care, mid-level provider. AI was really big this last year. We're just starting to meet as part of the program committee, so we'll see how things look for next year.
For next year.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And well, one thing that I always ask people that come to the podcast is, how have you seen like resistance towards adopting AI in general? It doesn't have to be about scribing or radiology specifically, but it can literally be simple stuff like using ChatGPT to send your emails. Like, how are you seeing like resistance of AI within the VetMed community as a whole? Because I talk to a lot of vets every day, right? And more and more and more, I've seen a trajectory where people were scared at the beginning. People thought that it was not going to be useful, specifically for like describing space. And I recognize that I got it late compared to, like, for example, Signal Pet, right? Like, but I have seen in just this year how that mindset has shifted a little bit towards how is this going to be useful for me versus like, what are you doing differently, or like how can I get started? Like I have seen a change in like people wanting to use this thing, but every now and then you still meet somebody that has not an idea of AI at all, have never used ChatGPT, and it's like, oh my goodness, like how can we better, help educate these people, or in general, I wanted to know like how often you meet this type of people, or have you also seen a trajectory where people are now more looking forward to AI and trying these things? How have you seen that outlook?
It's so fascinating to watch, right? Because if we look back at say 2017 to 2019, everyone was talking about telemedicine, and there were a lot of misunderstandings of what it is and how it's done and the companies that are out there and all that kind of stuff. And so what we were trying to do as part of the Innovation Council was just demystifying that a lot. And so we'd go back down to like really basic things, like if you have used a phone to talk with a client at some point, you've done telehealth. Like just getting them understanding what these
Yeah,
terms actually mean, right? And it's
yeah,
the same thing with AI. So I just advocate for people to do exactly what you just described. Like just try Chat GPT. And if that makes your life a little bit better, great.
yeah,
Keep using it.
yeah,
Definitely be skeptical of it and ask questions. Like a lot of things that we hear are around data security.
yep,
If they're using ChatGPT or they're using another platform,
yep,
how do they know that they're not breaking the law by sharing information that they shouldn't be sharing? Great question, and that's a question absolutely for those companies. So if they're thinking about using VetRec or another scribing company, then ask the company the question, how do we know that this is secure? There's other stuff like, do I have to tell my client that I'm using AI tools? And there are a lot of people who are saying that's absolutely the case. There's a major challenge with that, and that's that when we look at everything that's being developed today,
yeah,
all of that is using AI. And so, do you then have to ask your client for every single thing that could potentially be using AI?
yeah,
Or is it just like, hey, by the way, we're using AI? Like there's a lot of things that are going to come out of that where there's not really clear avenues for that. But the basic thing is like, just try ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot or one of these other ones.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
try it. And if it makes your life better, use it. And if it doesn't make your life better, then don't use it. It's that simple.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. It makes sense what you're saying, and I wanted to piggyback on that to a discussion that I don't know if you remember we listened to at the Hive conference, the future of education in VetMed in
Mhm.
Phoenix a couple months ago, and there was a long discussion about, hey, AI is good, yes, it helps us, cool, but students still need to learn how to write a medical record, for example. Students still need to learn how to interpret a radiography. And so you can't just throw AI at them and have them not learn it. And, I actually intervened there and I was like, well, it's not about, not teaching them that. It's the same thing as like coding. Like you still need to know the basics and the foundational programming languages. You still need to know how it works and how to do it so that you can also fact check whatever the AI is telling you, but you should be using a tool that can help you and make it faster. And so I think my question to you, and it's just like, if you remember that conversation, is should we be doing something differently to students, to College of VetMed, to the resources of how they get trained on these particular tools and how they are changing and evolving by the time they leave college and go into private practice, for example? Like, what is your take on that education angle and students specifically, and whether there's something that you wanted to share there based on the conference that we went to?
Yeah, I've had this conversation quite a bit with
Yeah,
people. And it's a super fascinating conversation, right? And what are the things that people actually need to know? Like, for example, do you need to know how to replace your alternator in order to drive a car in order to get groceries? Right? Like you don't need to do that. You need to know how to drive the car. You need
yep,
to know where the gas and the brake are and the steering wheel is and that kind of stuff. But do you need to know, for example, what a catalytic converter is in order to get groceries? You don't. Okay. So is that the same? Maybe that's not the right analogy to use, right? Because we need to make sure that every veterinarian knows what a proper medical record looks like,
right,
and to make sure that they can understand and identify what should be in there and what should not be in there. But does that mean that they actually have to write the medical record? Or does it mean that they should just know what's in there? And I
right.
think where we're going is that they don't necessarily need to write it as long as they have the appropriate medical record for legal purposes, for
Of course.
educational purposes, for the client, for
Yep,
continuity of care amongst the veterinarians and the team. Like there's a whole bunch of reasons.
yep,
So they need to know what it looks like, but I don't think they need to know how to
yeah,
actually write it, like specifically in each detail. But I'm like you said at the very beginning, I'm not a veterinarian, and everyone's going to be a little bit different. But I just think, what is the most efficient way of getting things done with the highest quality care possible? And if for some people that means writing out the medical record themselves and not using scribing tools, so
Yeah.
be it. And if for some other people they're like, no, I verify every single word that goes into that medical record. I've used a scribing company, but I feel comfortable being able to use that and move forward. And it saves me time, which means I can see more appointments, or it means I can go home earlier. That's a win.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I agree. I agree. I always use the analogy of the coding because I think
Mhm.
it's a very similar analogy, and like I have friends of friends who are currently in college who always tell me these things about, well, why am I going to study computer science? There's already ChatGPT, and it's like it's not about that.
Mhm.
You need to know, and you still need to learn.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyways, I get it. I completely get it. I think now that we're almost ending the podcast, I wanted to ask. I don't know if how much you know. This is not particularly about AI specifically, but I was recently introduced a couple days ago and at a conference, and then a couple months ago I was reading about it. This company called Loyal,
Hmm.
and what they're doing from, I guess, not AI specifically, but like an innovation, like extraordinary innovation to potentially increase the longevity of dogs, particularly I think right now, right, and how long they live. Any takes there? Any specific things that you've read? Hot takes are valid, or not hot takes too. Like, I don't know. I just wanted to know from you that have been in this space, like what do you think? Like, where are we going?
It's generated a ton of interest, and a lot of investment. And it looks like, if the science bears out, like, it could really change the way that we think about the longevity of the animals that we love and care for.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm excited by it. I think that there's a lot of concern because
yeah,
of things like,
yeah,
Theranos and that kind of stuff. I'm not equating these two things to being the same thing, but
yeah.
I think it's a really interesting development, and it could have the potential to make the lives of our animals that much better.
Yeah.
But I'm totally at the limits of my understanding when it comes to the
Oh,
science of it, right? So like,
same. I was actually even talking to some veterinarians, and they were telling me that I don't know right out of the bat what does this mean. Like, I need to relearn a lot of the things that they're saying because it's completely mind blowing. And it's if a veterinarian tells you that, then it's like, okay,
yeah,
let once you know it, so that you can tell me a little bit how it works, because I don't understand it either. So, anyway, awesome, Aaron. Thank you so much for coming here. I hope this was a nice chat, and really, really thank you.
yeah, yeah. Likewise, it was great chatting with you.
Awesome, man. Bye.
Bye.